This is Resolute, and welcome to Man Talk. I'm Vince Miller, your founder and host. So good to be with you again today. We're in our new series on 30 virtues that build a man. Today, we're looking at the lesson entitled Renewing the Mind. We're talking about how to develop a new mindset as a man. I am so excited to be with Rob Satrom today. Thanks for being with us, Rob.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Rob is the president founder of Feedback Wrench, which is a marketing firm helping small to medium-sized businesses, right?
Yep.
Develop content on the web and learning how to really market that to the world. And I got to tell you, there's probably not a guy better to talk about how to develop a new mindset than a guy who's trying to convince businesses that they need to develop a new mindset, right? So I want you to talk about this a little bit, Rob, because to me, it's fascinating. I think that we as guys are very challenged to develop new mindsets in our life. We sometimes take for granted that we think we're very adaptable, but our mind is set, and sometimes we have a hard time moving our mindset. I would assume as you work with these small business guys and gals, right, that are out there in the world, let's take just Joe Plumber, right, for example, that he has a mindset on his business that's unique. And then you come in and you're trying to help him to understand how to market that to the world. It's probably hard for him to change his mindset on how he views his business, not just in the business, but the business to the world. And, you know, these guys have these businesses, they start working just basically in the business, but sometimes they need to move their thinking to working on the business, right? Looking at things from the outside. How hard is it, Rob, for you to convince a guy to work on his business from the outside perspective? Is that hard to get guys to change their mindset?
Well, it's really easy for me because I'm the best. But no. Yeah, I definitely think there's a bunch of tensions that pop up when you start talking about where do you want to go with your business. One of the good things is most folks that I'm talking with, they know that they have a preferred future that they want to head towards, right? So they understand that, wait a minute, I like where I'm at. Maybe there's something better that we can pursue for the most part. But a couple of tensions that always pop up when it comes to mindset is, I'll be the first to tell you, I overvalue what I value, you know, whatever my opinion is. And I think as men, we all think we're right. And I would say that an entrepreneur, rightfully so, can be extra stubborn because it's been what has gotten them to where they are, right? So oftentimes, one of the first tensions that pop up is generally in a small business, you have somebody that's really great at maybe business development or sales, and then you have kind of the execution side of it. So there's always these two sides to it, right? What I've found is generally the people that I'm working with are the type of entrepreneur that are really great on this execution side. I used to do diesel mechanic for this guy, and then I said, wait a minute, I can make $200 an hour doing it myself. And you start doing it and you start actually producing work. Then what happens is you start to get to this point where, wait a minute, some extra sales, better marketing, or maybe a more focused business structure. Do you have a mission, a purpose, a company promise, or some values that you know you want to exhibit might be helpful than an actual, you know, a web presence and a marketing strategy to get that message out would be extra helpful.
Okay, so check this out. So I think I'm the average entrepreneur. Okay, so I'm just going to say this to you. You tell me how to respond. What's the appropriate response to it? So I'm the average entrepreneur. I think I know more about my business than you do, because you're going to knock on my door one day and say, I'm going to help you market your business, right? So you come in from the outside. I'm going to tell you, I think how your average potential client responds to you is, I know more about this than you do. What do you have for me, right? So you come from the outside and you're trying to offer this perspective, but of course, we entrepreneurs, we're a little stubborn, you use that word, because we work on it day to day and understand so much about it. It's hard then for you to convince me that I really need your help. But I leaned into that with you, right? There was a day that I reached out to you and I said, Rob, I need your help. And I remember you helped me for a while, right? And invested some time into me. And I remember a couple of times a week we were having a conversation. You were helping me do some marketing. It was very helpful for me to kind of see outside of myself. But over that month, I began to change my mindset regarding the fact that I did need you, because your fresh perspective changed who I was, how I did business, and suddenly I discovered, oh, I need you. But there was this initial response I had that was kind of like, I know something's wrong, but I don't know if you have the answer. How often do you run into that with clients or prospective clients?
Yeah. I'd say it's about 50-50 of every meeting that I have. And it's a blessing in a lot of ways, because it truly is. They know what they want to do. It's that grind every day that's getting them to where they want to be. And what usually helps is we start doing the math to start understanding, well, how many transactions did you have last year? How many do you have capacity to do this year? What kind of growth do you hope to see? How much do you make on, you start getting granular to see, hey, can I help you pay your mortgage a little bit better?
Exactly. And you start asking some questions, you start finding those little problems, and you try to find ways to present reasonable solutions to them. And that's kind of how the mindset starts to change, right? You start to see that change. I think what's interesting about the text today, so this is from the book 30 Virtues That Build a Man, and we're in this lesson on renewing, is Romans 12, 1, 2, and 3, very, very well-known verses. It talks about how do we renew the mind, right? It's talking about this renewal of a mindset, and that all of us need to have that renewal in our own life. And that it requires an effort for that to happen. It's through a transformation process. I know that in my own life, that transformation process is sometimes more difficult than we realize, right? So, for example, we have these deep-seated beliefs sometimes that are very hard to change. I don't know if you ever remember that movie by Leonardo DiCaprio. He was the lead actor in this movie called Inception. Do you remember that movie at all? And the idea was that they were planting ideas into the mind, deep into the mind of people that would set their mind on a certain thing so they could think a certain way. I think inside of every person, what Paul is trying to teach me in Romans here is that we have these deep-seated beliefs that we kind of have to awaken, discover, pull apart so that we can actually change. And that's part of what I think the service that you provide to other people is you're helping them to see outside of their kind of myopic view and to see an image of the world that how other people see them, right? And I think that process is relatively painful sometimes, or can be easy if we're really open to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you said it. It's definitely a mindset thing of, is your mindset that when somebody comes in to tell me what I ought to do, or in their opinion, is it something that it's them versus me? Or is it a mindset of, I can render out great information from other people, that there's something to learn in every interaction? Those types of mindsets, the entrepreneurs that have those types of mindsets where you're going to be a learner, and it truly is a mindset. It's not just that they go, okay, Rob, take my money and help me. It's more of, they're the type of people that understand, A, I can learn things from other people. I have a humility about myself to be able to actually learn. B, surrounding myself with people that have different strengths, different opinions is valuable to the organization. But you're right, it's definitely mindsets. And it is an idea. It's a deep found thinking. And probably the more stubborn people that I bump into, it's perfectly fine because it is a strength to be stubborn when you're executing every day. But once you pierce in to try and say, hey, I think together we're going to be this yin and yang. I think I'm going to be able to bring Lloyd and Harry or whatever it is. If we can be a team here, I think we're going to have different strengths to bring each other out. And those that have a mindset that allow that, they make more money. They flourish. They tend to be happier. Their teams are more satisfied from what I can see.
Yeah, that's really good. And so there is an aspect, I think, of what you're saying today where kind of our grit, our guerrilla warfare, and our stubbornness is a good attribute, but there's also another side of it. It's that renewal mindset to say, let's be willing to grow, let's be willing to learn, let's be willing to invest in what's next, right? To take us to the next level, to the next place.
So one of the things that I always struggle with, how do you know and how do you self-identify that you've got a mindset that needs changing? That's always a challenge to me. What do you think?
I think that we get stuck in ways of thinking, right? So I'll give you an example from my youth. I remember when I was probably about 12 years old, I was on the basketball court with a bunch of kids at gym class. We put on our funky gear. We go in the locker room, change, come out, and into that gear that you could turn inside out for multiple weeks at a time, right? And we came out on the basketball court, and these 3 or 4 guys are standing together, and then one of these guys comes over, and the guy who comes over to tell us a story about one of our friends, Tony. He's telling a story about Tony and what Tony had did with a girl over the weekend. He had his first sexual experience with a girl. Okay, that's what happened. And this guy is telling us all the details of the story, just completely defecating over these two people, right? And then he finishes the story because gym class is about to start. And then he says these words to the group. He says, well, guys, I guess Tony became a man. Tony became a man. And then he just kind of dropped the mic and walked away. And I'll never forget that. 12 years old, that was very impressionable to me, because what that did was seed a thought in my mind that being a man was about sexually conquering women. I held that thought for 5 years. Growing up in a non-Christian home, I was very influenced by that thought, and it was very powerful for directing all my behavior. Until one day I came to learn that that is not the way men treated women, right? Taught by my grandfather who mentored me, I came to discover that there was a respectful way to treat women, an appropriate way to have relationships, and that sex was something that was safe for marriage. And that began to kind of untwine this old mindset that was deeply seated in my mind. You know, I think that the way we begin to develop a new mindset is by being open to what is actually true and assessing in our own mind what is true and what is false. That's what I love about the title of your company, Feedback Wrench, right? It's a great name because it's all about our willingness to receive that feedback, that willingness to learn. You talked about that just a little while ago, and we've got to have an impulse and a posture to be teachable, to be willing, to be adaptable, because that's the way we grow. And we have to be willing to attack deep-seated thoughts that may be terribly wrong and false, and be willing to look at those even if they actually are over-attached to our identity. And that's what's hard. So that's where it all begins for me.
So I don't think there's a guy out there that wouldn't be nodding their head to that, right? So what are like the practical steps? Like what can you actually do?
Yeah, that's a great question, because let's just move out of the ethereal and into the super pragmatic. I think it all begins with not assuming that you're always right. You know, you talk about the sense of stubbornness that you'll run into 50% of the time, right?
Not that I wouldn't hold that.
Yeah, right. Not that you would be a stubborn person, Rob, right? Yeah. We're all a little stubborn. But there's the good part of being stubborn, and that's the grit and the drive. But there's the bad part of being stubborn too that keeps us from renewing our mindset, and that is the willingness to look at ourselves and say that maybe I'm my own problem. And I think that's where it all begins, is to maybe assume sometimes that you may not be right. That's where developing a new mindset begins, is assuming that you're not always right. And the next time I sit down with Rob Satchram from Feedback Wrench, I can say to myself, man, maybe I have something to learn about business, leadership, marketing, customers, maybe even my relationship with God from Rob Satchram, because he has some truth for me. And I think that's where it all begins, guys. I think right there in that moment, are you willing to take a hard look at reality for what it truly is and who you really are? So maybe it means sitting down with the journal and assessing your own life a little bit and seeing the places in your family, in your marriage, in your church life, in your individual life that need to be addressed, and start by making some really small changes to how you look at and think about that situation. We all have somebody in life that we would really love to change, right? You can think of someone, right? I mean, like that, we can think of a person that, man, we'd love to change this one tiny thing about our son, about our dad, about our wife, about our friend, about our boss. I mean, we all have it, right? We all have this one little, well, think about that in regards to yourself. Everybody else has a thought about you too, something that they see about you that they'd love to change. Why not start with this? Go to someone today and invite them to give feedback on you, something, ask them to tell you one thing that they would love to see change about you that would make you a better person, and then don't speak back into it. That'll change your mindset like that, right? So anyway, that's my encouragement to you guys today. So thanks for being with us again today. I hope you'll pick up a copy of 30 Virtues That Build a Man right from our website, beresolute.org/30, all spelled out, THIRTY 30. Go to it today. Purchase a copy. Give it to a friend. Give it to a brother. Give it to a neighbor. Give it to a pastor at church. Maybe give him 100 copies to pass out to all the guys. Get involved in a conversation just like Rob and I did today. And I promise you, life is better with Bible and brotherhood. That's how we grow, gentlemen. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you again here next time on another edition of Man Talk.